She was just the quiet woman fixing rifles in the snow, until one impossible shot at 2,980 meters exposed a past the military tried to bury. Her name was Charlotte Lark Myles, a forgotten sniper from a ghost unit erased from the records. But when a new generation of rogue shooters began mimicking her every move, she was forced to return, not to fight, but to teach. Welcome to my channel. They laughed when I held the rifle. One of them even said, let her try it for fun, probably never aimed past 100 meters anyway. I didn't say a word, just took the Macmillan TAC 338 from the guy's hands and adjusted the scope like I'd done it every day for a decade. Because I had. The shot rang out like dry thunder, echoing across the frozen hills just west of Juneau, Alaska. No one said anything for a moment. Just that kind of awkward silence people fall into when the joke doesn't land the way they expected. Then the spotter's rangefinder beeped. 2,980 meters, he said. His voice had gone flat. All the air seemed to get sucked out of the place. Nobody knew me then. I was just the quiet woman who fixed gear at the back of the training facility. I went by Charlie now, short for Charlotte, and I'd been living alone in the outskirts of Douglas Island for the better part of 7 years. Wore flannel, patched up old rifles, kept my hair short and my head down. They didn't know I used to be chief calibration officer for an off-book recon unit operating in the foothills of Kandahar. Didn't know I used to shoot farther than any of their systems could measure. Didn't know my real name was Lieutenant Charlotte Lark Myles. Not until that shot. The training program was some corporate-sponsored tech showcase. Tactical scopes, AI-guided munitions, digital rangefinders. Whole facility smelled like fresh silicon and synthetic ambition. I was just maintenance, supposedly, assigned to calibrate scopes and service bipods. Truth is, I just wanted to be left alone. But then came the engineer kid. Looked like he'd never held a wrench, much less a rifle. Couldn't get a smart scope to stop glitching. I walked by, glanced at the screen, and murmured, your G7's off. Humidity shifted overnight. Recalibrated. Kept walking. Didn't even slow down. He tried it. Worked like a charm. That was the start. Later, I was outside checking wind conditions when I heard laughter behind me. The same kid, trying to reclaim his pride. Hey, Charlie, he called out. Why don't you give it a shot? There's a target 2,500 meters out, but you can't even see it. The others laughed. Someone handed me the TAC 338 like it was a joke. Something about how I probably thought I was in a video game. I didn't argue, just settled into position, set my cheek to the stock, and felt something shift inside. It had been a long time, but your body remembers. And mine never forgot. Is it loaded? I asked. That got them going again. They thought I was asking because I didn't know. But that wasn't it. I asked because I always asked. Because I'd once lost a friend on a range due to a loaded chamber someone assumed was clear. An older SEAL standing nearby watched me a little closer now. He saw the way I checked the bolt, how I tested the tension on the bipod, the way I breathed as I lined up behind the scope. You sure about this? He asked. His voice had changed. I looked through the scope, saw the glint of a distant target winking like a star through the winter fog. I've seen farther, I told him. And I had. Farther than most people ever dared to believe possible. Didn't touch the ballistic computer. Didn't pull up the charts. Just tossed some dust into the wind and listened. Every part of me slowed down. My heartbeat fell into rhythm. My breathing evened. I felt the cold metal of the trigger beneath the pad of my finger, like shaking hands with an old friend you hadn't seen in years. Then I pulled it. The report cracked through the air, echoing down the valley like a punchline that landed too hard. Then silence. 10 seconds. 15. The smirk disappeared from the engineer's face. At 30 seconds, the spotter's binoculars trembled. I see impact, he whispered. Confirmed. Hit at 2,980 meters. Single shot. Silence turned to awe, and I didn't even smile. I just stood, cleaned the bolt, and handed the rifle back. My hand steady, my mind already slipping back into the quiet. I didn't say anything until I turned to the engineer. Scope's off by 2 degrees, I told him. Humidity sensor needs recalibrating. Next time you pick a fight, maybe make sure you know who you're talking to. The SEAL stepped closer. His voice soft now. Lark? From Iron Ghost? Heads turned. Iron Ghost. That wasn't a place. That wasn't a squad. It was a ghost unit. The one nobody mentioned, but everybody heard about. A recon sniper cell that made shots no one believed were possible. Operated under deep black contracts until one mission went sideways, and we were quietly erased. You're supposed to be, he started. Dead? I asked. Parts of me are. They didn't know what to say after that. But I knew what I'd done. That shot wasn't about the target. It was a memory. A reckoning. A goodbye I hadn't finished saying. I didn't stick around for the aftermath. Let the engineers chew on their disbelief while I walked back toward the maintenance bay, boots crunching over frozen gravel. The wind had picked up, stirring dry snow across the open range. I could feel ice burning into my back, but nobody followed. Nobody except the seal. He caught up halfway down the slope, slowing to match my pace. He wasn't in uniform, just a parka over thermals, rangefinder still hanging around his neck. You always shoot like that? He asked. Only when someone's watching, I said. He chuckled, but it faded quick. You really are her. Lieutenant Myles. Iron Ghost 3. I said. That name's not mine anymore. He stopped walking. I kept going. You were at Red Zone Kilo, weren't you? That made me stop. I turned slow, looked him in the eye. You know what happened there? He nodded once. I was in Overwatch during the evac. Saw the laser trace from your spotter go dark. Figured your team never made it. I clenched my jaw. Only half of US did. He didn't push after that. Just walked with me the rest of the way in silence. When we got back to the shack, I opened the door and flicked on the lights. The smell of oil and solvent drifted out like an old song. Racks of rifles lined the walls, scopes soaking in solution, charts pinned to the corkboard with half-faded weather patterns and calibration grids. This wasn't a lab. This was memory. The SEAL took it all in with a quiet kind of reverence. Then he handed me something. A small patch of fabric, worn but clean. A triangle of gray with a black insignia. A feathered wing crossed with a sight pin. You dropped this, he said. I stared at it a moment before taking it back. Where'd you get that? They still talk about your unit, he said. Not officially, but guys on long deployments, especially the ones who've been in tight spots, they've heard of you. The ones who say they felt like someone was watching them through a scope when they were pinned and knew they weren't alone. That's you, right? I didn't answer, because he already knew. That patch used to mean something. Iron Ghost wasn't about kills. It was about precision. Responsibility. A bullet only left my barrel if I was sure it would save more than it took. That was our creed. Until that last mission. Until Marcus. He was my spotter. Sharpest eyes I've ever known. We were paired in Kandahar, trained in the Colorado cold, tested in the red zone, and we worked like we shared a brain. He'd read the air before I could ask. Knew the way wind curled off sandstone cliffs before it even moved the flags. He had a daughter. I had a promise to keep her father alive. I failed. Marcus died because we were fed bad intel. He was guiding me through a shot when a secondary charge went off inside the compound. I made the shot, but the heat wave from the explosion caught him in the chest. Threw him 40 feet. He was already gone when I reached him. Carried him 3 miles through hostile territory. Didn't stop, didn't cry, didn't even breathe properly. Just kept moving like some broken machine stuck in the last order it had ever received. After the funeral, I burned everything with my name on it. Changed identities. Took a contract fixing scopes and rifles for retired instructors and newer recruits who didn't know what they were holding. It worked for a while, until that shot pulled it all back. Why now? The SEAL finally asked. Why take the shot? Because someone needed to remember, I said. He left not long after, but he didn't take his eyes off me. Not in a suspicious way. It was more like how a soldier watches someone who once pulled them from fire. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I stepped out onto my porch with a cup of coffee, planning to walk out to the workshop and realign a broken reticle mount from the day before. But I froze mid-step. 3 black SUVs were parked outside the snow-covered fence of my cabin. I knew the make. I knew the plates. I knew the sound of the engines before they even cut off. Bureau types. Maybe joint task. Maybe defense logistics. Didn't matter. They didn't come to sip cocoa and ask about my past. One of them stepped out, tall, wide stance, clipboard in one hand and a tight expression in the other. Charlotte Myles? He asked, as if the question would be rhetorical. Not for a long time, I said. He didn't smile, just nodded toward the back seat. Colonel Adler would like a word. I didn't move, just raised my cup and took a slow sip. You know, I said, I made that shot on my day off. Ma'am, he said, your day off just got reclassified. That got a faint smile out of me. They opened the door. Inside sat a man I hadn't seen since the last op briefing I ever attended. Silver hair now. Same scar near his jawline. The same one he got on a jump op over Syria. Colonel Adler, I said. Still got your hands steady, Lark? He asked. I took a seat across from him. I didn't shoot for applause, I said. And I'm not looking for redemption. He held up a folder. Didn't come for either. Just need you to look at something. He opened it. Satellite images. Flight paths. Wind vectors scribbled in red. A corridor marked near the northern Arctic shelf. Too narrow for commercial air, too quiet for military drills. Recon teams are picking up low-frequency ECM, he said. Stuff that doesn't match any Allied signal. Some of the younger techs think it's a glitch. And you don't? I asked. I know a signature when I see one, Adler replied. This is old school. Analog. Tactical echo pulses, just like the ones Iron Ghost used in the dust phase. Ghost isn't real anymore, I said. He nodded. But someone's using our tools. Our math. Our tactics. I exhaled slowly. They weren't just resurrecting tech. They were resurrecting us. We didn't speak much on the way to the outpost. Colonel Adler sat across from me in the back of the SUV, leafing through documents I could have drawn from memory. ECM pulse maps. Wind tunnel simulations. Digital suppression zones too clean for civilian tech, too messy for sanctioned ops. I recognized the pattern. We called it whisper grid back in the day, a tactic used when you needed to fly under every radar system without so much as a flicker. You'd bounce signals off natural terrain, distort heat signatures, and mass propulsion in wind-heavy corridors. There were only 4 places on the planet you could pull it off properly. They were using one now, north of Juno, right through a corridor we used to call Devil's Spine. Nobody knew that name anymore, except the ghosts. You think it's rogue state tech? I asked. Adler didn't look up. We think it's worse. I waited. You remember Operation Latchkey? I blinked. That was a mission buried so deep it didn't exist, even in the redacted files. 3 units, Iron Ghost, Falcon Hive, and Vector 6, assigned to eliminate a high-value technocrat believed to be selling electronic warfare systems to non-state actors. The mission went sideways. Falcon Hive vanished. Vector 6 got torn apart by their own drone swarms when the targeting matrix turned against them. Only Iron Ghost made it out. Barely. Latchkey was buried for a reason, I said. We scrubbed the site, burned the manifests, and walked through that hell so nobody else had to. Adler leaned forward, eyes sharp. They're rebuilding it. He pulled out a grainy photo. Thermal imaging from high altitude. But the lines were clear. Tower nodes. Signal beacons. Surface relays buried under permafrost. That's not just a relay, I said. That's a triangulation net. He nodded. And it's using your old algorithms. Not just the concept. The actual math. Your math. That hit different. There's something deeply personal about watching ghosts come back wearing your old uniform. We arrived at the outpost. Nothing flashy, just a low-profile facility tucked into the forest near Glacier Point. Snow dusted the rooftops. It was cold in that deep, settled way you only find in Alaska before sunrise. The kind of cold that makes your joints feel like rusted hinges. They led me down a hallway and into a briefing room where a younger analyst was waiting. Kid couldn't have been older than 25, all sharp jaw and nervous fingers. He introduced himself as Lieutenant Ramirez, then started pulling up 3D terrain renders on a wall display. The corridor we're watching runs 17 miles north to south, he explained. High wind resistance, natural canyons on both sides. Perfect place to run analog stealth ops. Thing is, there shouldn't be any activity here. Not anymore. He tapped a screen. But then we picked up this. The footage flickered to life, grainy black and white video. A long, narrow shape darting between snow-streaked ravines. No transponder. No heat signature. Moving too fast for a drone, too low for a plane. What am I looking at? I asked. Unregistered aircraft. No known design match. Moves like a manned craft. Flies like it's reading the terrain, not relying on instruments. We think it's human-guided. My stomach twisted, because I knew what that meant. Someone trained. Someone like us. Whoever's flying that thing isn't testing tech, I said. They're proving muscle memory. That's why they're using this corridor. It's not about surveillance. It's a training ground. Ramirez nodded. Or worse, a recruitment test. The thought landed like ice water. See, when you spend a decade becoming a ghost, sharpening every instinct, teaching yourself to feel the way a bullet bends in wind. You start to think no one else could do what you did. But then you realize someone else was watching. Someone was copying. And now, they were practicing. Adler spoke next. We're not asking you to pick up a rifle again, Lark. But we need someone who understands how this was built, because someone's using you as a blueprint. I looked at the screen again, watched the aircraft flicker into view, duck below the tree line, vanish like smoke in the snow. Show me the route, I said. By nightfall, I was back on the range. The TAC 338 they handed me had been cleaned, stripped, and rebuilt. Optics were better than mine, but it didn't feel right in my hands yet, not until I tuned it myself. That meant twisting dials no one else dared touch. It meant adjusting for air pressure by licking your lips and reading how cold the wind bit into your skin. Adler stood nearby, watching but silent. The rest of the range crew pretended to check their equipment, but their eyes stayed on me. I lay down, breathed deep, in through the nose, out through the lips, felt my heartbeat slow. Through the scope, I saw the target, a metal disc bolted to a wind-shifting stand 2,000 meters out. Most shooters would need a computer to even register a hit at that range. I didn't. I squeezed the trigger. One sharp crack. The disc spun like a coin flipped in midair. The range officer's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. No one clapped. They just stood there, like they'd seen something sacred. Still got it, Adler murmured. No, I said, sliding the bolt back. It never left. Back at the outpost, Adler handed me a plain envelope. No stamp, no return address. Just one word typed across the front, Sparrow. I hadn't heard that name in years. It was Marcus's call sign. My spotter. Inside the envelope was a note. If you see this message, we are not gone. We are remembering. The old ways are alive. S. Below that was a set of coordinates. Same corridor. Same devil's spine. And a time. Midnight. Whoever was out there. They knew I was watching. They wanted me to come find them. And I would. Not for revenge. Not for duty. For Marcus. For what we lost. And maybe, just maybe, for what still needed saving. The moon was hanging low over the valley when I slipped out of the outpost, rifle slung across my back, snow crunching softly under each boot step. I'd made sure no one followed. Told Adler I was taking a rest shift, which wasn't exactly a lie. I just didn't tell him where I planned to take it. The coordinates on the note pointed to a location about 6 miles into the Devil's Spine, deep in the ridgeline where signal dropped and compasses spun like drunk dancers. No one patrolled there. Not unless they had a damn good reason. And I had one. The trees grew denser the deeper I hiked, snow clinging to their limbs like ghosts. Everything was quiet, except for the low whistle of wind weaving through branches. The kind of quiet that makes your thoughts echo louder than your footsteps. My breath was steady, rifle tight against my back. A compass clipped to my jacket, though I didn't trust it. I walked by memory now, not coordinates. At 2,347 hours, I crested the ridge overlooking the spine. The canyon fell away beneath me like the earth had been split with a blade. Jagged rock, steep angles, treacherous footing. And there, exactly where the note said it would be, was the signal. A soft blue light flickered near the base of the ridge, tucked beneath an overhang of ice and stone. Not a flare. Too dim for that. More like a beacon, the kind used for tight band comm relays. One only someone with training would recognize. I slid down the embankment, boots crunching ice and stone. When I got close, I slowed, dropped to a knee, and scanned the area. Nothing moved. No heat signatures. No drone whine. No digital pings. But there was a trail. Faint footprints, too wide for snowshoes, heading west, straight into the pass. Whoever left them wasn't trying to hide, but they also knew the terrain. The steps were calculated. Confident. I followed them. Half a mile in, the path opened into a shallow hollow surrounded by rock walls. Snow swirled in slow spirals across the open space. That's when I saw the figure, standing perfectly still in the center of the clearing. They wore a heavy canvas jacket, hood up, face hidden by a scarf. Gloved hands hung loose at their sides. No weapon raised. No threat posture. I kept my own rifle lowered but ready. You sent the message, I said. The figure tilted their head slightly, like they were confirming what I already knew. Why? I asked. No reply. Instead, the figure reached slowly into their jacket and pulled out something small. Tossed it underhand toward me. I caught it. A coin. Not just any coin, An old Iron Ghost Challenge coin. Ours were never official. They didn't have government seals or mission dates. Just a simple engraving, a feathered wing across a rifle barrel. And on the edge, a name. Chun. M. I stared at it for a long time, my breath fogging the air. Where did you get this? I demanded. Still no answer. They raised a hand slowly, unzipping their jacket just enough to reveal a patch beneath. Not Iron Ghost. Another unit. One I hadn't seen in almost 10 years. Kestrel line. Those units were disbanded, I said. Scrubbed. Gone. Finally, a voice, distorted slightly, probably through a throat mic. No one's ever really gone, Lark. We just stopped being noticed. My stomach tightened. Who are you? I asked. The figure stepped closer into the moonlight, just enough to reveal a single eye through the scarf. Gray, sharp, calm, and familiar. I was there, they said. In Kilo Zone. I saw what happened to Marcus. And I saw you carry him out. Then you know why I disappeared. The figure nodded. And why we need you now. I didn't move. My hands were fists in my gloves. You people, you kept operating? I asked. We adapted. After Ghost, Falcon, and Kestrel were retired, some of us stayed underground. We monitored corridors, tracked emerging signals, watched the tech evolve, and we saw when the wrong people started using our methods. I glanced down at the coin in my palm again. Marcus's name, a symbol of a mission that ended everything. He was my spotter, I whispered. I know, the voice said. And he wasn't the only one we lost. There was a pause. Then they added, we're building something again. Quietly, carefully, but we need someone to anchor the shot. I looked up, eyes narrowing. You're recruiting. The figure nodded. Not officially. Never officially. But we need training. Real training. Not simulators. Not algorithms. We need instinct. We need the last sniper who made the world stop at 2,980 meters. Silence stretched between us like wire. Then they added, we need you to teach us how to feel the shot, not just measure it. I looked out over the ravine. Snow falling gently now. I could almost hear Marcus whispering corrections in my ear. See his smile beneath that stupid helmet, the one with his daughter's photo taped inside. You brought me here for a reason, I said. So let me be clear. If you're building something to hit targets, I'm not interested. If this is about politics or vengeance, you can walk back to whatever rock you crawled out from. It's not, the voice said quietly. It's about preparation, precision, survival. The old systems are breaking down. New ones are being abused. And the only thing between good soldiers and bad outcomes is knowledge. That part felt true. I took a slow breath, closed my fingers around the coin. I don't shoot anymore, I said, but I'll show others how to breathe. The figure nodded once, then vanished into the snow the way ghosts do, quiet, intentional, impossible to trace. I stood alone for a while, listening, not for sounds, but for something older, something like purpose. I was back at the outpost by 0400. No one noticed I was gone. Or if they did, they chose not to say anything. In this world, silence is sometimes a kind of permission. The next day, I took a walk down to the storage hangar, past the intake files, straight past the check-in desk, and into the armory where the old-world tools were kept. Manual scopes, pressure-sensitive trigger kits, no chips, no AI, just raw steel and trust. I found what I needed in a battered wooden crate that hadn't been opened in at least 10 years. Inside was a scope I'd once calibrated for a Falcon Hive marksman. Fixed it by hand when the gyroscopic alignment broke mid-deployment. Still bore my serial scratch on the bottom lip. LM3. I cleaned it that afternoon. Took me 4 hours, 3 cloths, and every ounce of memory I still carried in my bones. By the time I finished, it looked ready to see again. Like me. That evening, I gave Adler my answer. I'll do it, I told him. But I do it my way. No brass. No press. No names. And they don't salute me. They listen to me. He nodded. You'll have the old range. We'll assign who you want. I didn't want many. Just a few who needed to learn. The first class started 5 days later. No uniforms. No ranks. Just 4 recruits. 2 Army, 1 Marine, 1 from, well, I never asked. But his accent said old-school Northern England, and the way he moved said he'd seen action in places maps won't admit exist. The youngest was maybe 22. The oldest was probably me. They sat in a half-circle on the cold, wind-blasted firing line, rifles across their laps, notebooks unopened, unsure if they were in a lecture or a test. I stood in front of them with nothing but a pair of gloves in my back pocket and a coffee in hand. "You're here because someone decided you're good," I said. "That doesn't matter to me." The wind pulled at my collar. "What matters is whether you're real. Whether you understand that this isn't about how many targets you can hit, but which ones matter." The young Marine raised his hand. "Ma'am, do we get ballistics packs? Tablets?" I shook my head. "You get dirt. You get wind. You get the mountain. Everything else you bring, you'll leave behind by week 2. One of the army kids looked skeptical. "So, we're just going off instinct." I stepped close to him, close enough for him to see the age behind my eyes. "Instinct's what you rely on when the comms are jammed, your spotter's bleeding out, and the last drone just got taken down by a pine tree. Instinct is what brings you home. You'll learn it." We started simple. No scopes, just breath work. I had them lie flat for 30 minutes, face to the ground, feeling the pressure in their chest change with every inhale. Then we did heartbeat tracking, counting beats between breaths until they could match each exhale with a rising second hand. Some called it meditation. I called it survival. "You can't feel the world until you feel yourself disappearing inside it," I told them. "Your rifle is not your weapon. Stillness is your weapon." By day 3, their hands stopped shaking when they reached for the trigger. By day 5, they stopped reaching altogether and just waited. The first shot came on day 6. Cold front moved in overnight, wind slicing in from the north like razors wrapped in silk. Perfect conditions for a learning failure. Except failure was the whole point. "You," I said, nodding at the British kid. "Name, price, figures." I tossed him the old scope I'd repaired. "No computers, no spotters. Target is that steel ring across the ridge. 1,000 meters. He studied it a moment, then lay down. He did all the textbook stuff. Lined his eye, counted his breath, gauged the wind with powder from a crushed pine needle. But I could see it in his shoulders. He was still thinking. When the shot rang out, the sound echoed wrong. The bullet struck 5 feet wide, low right. The ring didn't move. "You're calculating like a machine," I told him. "And machines get cold. You want to make the shot? Feel it." He gritted his teeth. "You make it sound like magic." I crouched beside him. "You know how many bullets I fired that I couldn't explain afterward? How many kills I made with no math in my head? Just wind on my skin and a shadow in my gut telling me now." He didn't answer. "You're not a computer, Price. You're a weather system. Learn to feel the storm, not chart it." The second shot came the next morning. It landed a foot short, but it rang the steel. The sound echoed across the valley like an old bell announcing a forgotten truth. He didn't smile. Neither did I. We didn't need to. Later that evening, I was back at the cabin, cleaning that same old scope under the yellow light of my workbench, when my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. "Speak," I said. "You're not the only one training," came the voice. It was distorted, synthesized. My spine straightened. "Who is this?" "The ones you left behind. The ones who weren't pulled out of Kilo Zone. The ones who stayed." The line crackled. "We saw your class. We watched the range. Your students won't survive what's coming." I went cold. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Then silence. I sat in the dark for a long time, phone still in my hand, eyes locked on nothing. Because I recognized something in the voice, not the words, not the tone, but the calm. That surgical detachment. The kind of voice that belonged to someone who once stood behind a rifle and saw the world in scope rings. Someone like me. The voice stuck with me. Not just what it said, but how it said it. Calm, measured, like it had nothing left to lose and wasn't in a hurry to prove otherwise. That was a voice trained to pull triggers without needing approval. A voice I once carried myself. Back at the range the next morning, the air was tighter, heavier somehow. The students didn't know about the call, but they felt something shift. You could see it in the way they moved, slower, more deliberate. Like the mountains were holding their breath. Price hit a bullseye at 1,200 meters that day. I didn't praise him. Didn't have to. He didn't smile, either. He just turned to me and said, "Wind's different today? Split-layered." I felt it on the updraft. And that right there, that one sentence, told me we'd cracked through something. But the rest of them? Still teetering. The Marine, Ellis, couldn't shake her rhythm. She had the hands of a shooter, but not the heart rate. Her trigger pulls were still tied to tension, not timing. I worked with her for hours. "Count it," I said. "Breathe in, Hold on the top. Feel your heartbeat drop into your spine. She tried. Missed again. You're still fighting the rifle, I told her. You have to become the thing it wants to aim at. She stared at me like I was talking in riddles. Maybe I was. But I wasn't trying to build snipers anymore. I was trying to build survivors. There's a difference. That night, the second message came. Another blocked number. Text only. We train like you. Then we stopped waiting for permission. Attached was a photo. My stomach sank when I opened it. A compound, Middle East, from the terrain. Clearly marked civilian logistics hub. Or at least it had been. Now it was rubble. Burned out vehicles. No survivors in sight. Stamped across the bottom corner of the photo was a crude sigil I hadn't seen in years. 2 wings. One black, one silver. Rook line. The rogue branch. Formed from the splinters of disbanded teams. Rumored to have gone private. No oversight. No flags. Just missions. Just kills. And apparently, now, they were following me. Or maybe leading me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat out on the porch, rifle across my lap, watching the frost crawl down the railing like a slow leak from heaven. The next morning, Adler pulled me aside. You've made noise, he said, lips thin, face tighter than I'd ever seen it. DC called. They're asking questions. I didn't answer. He handed me a folder. Thick. Classified. Intercepted comms from a splinter op running out of an old NATO listening station in eastern Turkey. Call signs match Rookline signatures. And Lark, there's one more thing. He flipped the page. There, grainy and distorted, was a still from a thermal drone feed. 5 bodies moving in sync. For rifles. 1 spotter. But it wasn't the rifles that caught my eye. It was the figure leading them. Small. Female. Moving with that same confident, automatic grace I knew too well. Rifle slung just the right way. Steps evenly spaced. No wasted movement. She moves like you, Adler said quietly. I leaned in. Zoomed the left hand. He did. The still wasn't perfect, but it was enough. There, etched into the glove's knuckle guard, was a name. C. Chun. My chest tightened. No, I whispered. Adler looked at me, confused. My spotter's daughter, I said. Her name was Lana Chun. She was 2 years old when Marcus died. I'd never met her, not even once. But Marcus had carried a photo of her taped inside his helmet, right above the brow guard. Always said she'd grow up strong, curious, impossible to lie to. He used to talk to her in the dead of night over radio static, whispering through bulletproof walls like she could hear him halfway around the world. And now she was walking like me, shooting like me, leading them. How she got trained, how she ended up with Rook Line, I didn't know. But one thing was clear. She didn't want to be hidden. She wanted me to find her. 2 days later, I brought the recruits to the edge of the spine. Ellis, Price, the 2 others, Richter and Jules. You've all been taught to measure distance, I said. Now I want you to unlearn it. They looked puzzled. Out here, distance is an illusion, I went on. What matters is feel. Can you feel how long your bullet flies? Can you feel the mountain breathing while your trigger waits? They followed me into the ridge. We climbed the same paths I once walked with Marcus. At one point, I stopped and pointed to a narrow pass between 2 granite cliffs. This is where I made the 2,410 shot, I said. Target was an insurgent tech specialist. Mid-walk. Crosswind. 1 heartbeat window. Ellis asked softly, how do you know you could make it? I stared at the stone. Didn't, I said. Did it anyway. That night, Price came to my cabin. Ma'am, he said, standing at attention without being told. I found this under my bunk. He handed me a note. Typed. Same formatting as before. You're not the only one passing on your legacy. Below that, another name. Chun. L. And a line. She wants to see you fire again. One last time. I closed the door behind him, hands trembling slightly. Not from fear. From the weight of knowing what had to come next. Because if Lana Chun was out there, walking in our footsteps, using the skills I helped forge, then someone needed to make sure she didn't become the very thing we once fought to stop. And if that meant picking up the rifle one more time, so be it. The snow was falling harder now. Wet flakes that stuck to everything. Gear, gloves, even the old scope I'd been cleaning that morning when I heard the buzz of the base radio. Not my usual channel. Just 3 words. Check perimeter. Now. I moved fast, instinct kicking in long before thought. Out on the west ridgeline, behind the munitions shed, someone had left a package. Not a bomb. Not a threat. A case. Inside was a single round. Hand-etched. Match grade. 300 grain. Too heavy for standard ops. Too specific to be random. Alongside it was a note, tucked under the foam lining. You trained him. Now train me. I'll be waiting, L.C. Lana Chun. She'd found me. But she wasn't coming to shake hands. She was calling me out. That night, I couldn't sleep. The others were already sensing something. Price had started watching the ridgelines like he expected to see shadows. Ellis cleaned her rifle twice. Even Richter stopped cracking jokes. Something was shifting. Like the mountain knew something was coming down its spine. And me? I was back in the old rhythm. Timing breath with heartbeat. Counting seconds between wind gusts. Waiting for a signal. The next day, I took the class up higher than usual. Past the official range, to the overlook we used to call the ceiling. The wind up there cut like memory. I pointed to a spot across the canyon, near a shattered pine stump half buried in snow. That, I said, was Marcus Chin's last spot. They didn't speak. Didn't ask. Good. By sunset, I stood alone at the edge of the range with the gifted bullet in my hand. She was testing me. Not with threats, but with precision. 1 round. Match grade. Custom load. She wanted me to take a shot. Not at her. To her. A language only shooters understand. So I set up the old rifle, laid down in the cold, and waited for the wind to speak. When it did, I fired. A single round. Across the ridge. Into the hollow valley between us. A message sent at the speed of sound and silence. Not to hurt. Just to say, I hear you. I didn't expect a reply. Not right away. But 2 days later, it came, delivered not by drone, not by signal, but on foot. Private Jules spotted her first, cresting the eastern ridge in broad daylight like she belonged there. No weapon in her hands. Just a field pack, a worn coat, and the same eyes I remembered from a photo taped inside a helmet. Lana Chun. She walked straight to the range, stopped at the white line, and waited. Not a threat. A student. The class froze. Price gripped his rifle tighter. Ellis reached for her sidearm, but I gave her a look that stopped her cold. I've got this, I said. I walked to Lana slowly, heart pounding like distant artillery. We stood 6 feet apart, wind rustling between us. You're her, I said. She nodded. I am. I trained your father. And now I want you to train me. You already shoot like someone who's been trained. I do. But not by you. I studied her. She wasn't wearing insignia. No unit tags. No rank. Just something etched into her shoulder plate. A single rook. You're with Rookline. Was, she said. Not anymore. They wanted targets. I want truth. We didn't hug. Didn't cry. We just walked the range in silence. She asked questions later about wind, about heart rate, about the mental calculus of a 2,000-meter shot. But I saw what she was really asking. Is it too late for me? That night, after the others turned in, I found her sitting at the overlook, legs dangling over the cliff, the stars spilling out above her like a story waiting to be written. She didn't turn when she spoke. I saw the shot you took. The one across the canyon. The one that said, I remember. I sat beside her. He was my best friend, I said. Your dad. He saved my life more than once. She didn't speak for a while. Then, he would have wanted me to learn from you. I looked at her. Then let's begin. Lana didn't ask for special treatment, and I didn't give her any. She trained with the others. Carried her own gear. Took her own notes. But there was something different in her. She didn't flinch. Didn't guess. Didn't rush. Every move she made was like music composed in a language only a handful of people could understand. She had her father's instincts, and something else too. A kind of quiet fury coiled under her calm. By week's end, she was the one the others watched for cues. Even Price. Even me. I set up a live fire test on day 12. Real wind. Real time limit. Unknown target. We called it the ghost walk. 3 clicks of snow-choked trail for potential shots, but only one actual target. The rest were decoys. Infrared only. No markers. No beacons. Just terrain, breath, and gut. One by one, the team went through it. Ellis missed. Richter hesitated. Price hit the wrong target. Clean shot, but wrong call. Then Lana stepped up. Didn't ask questions. Didn't even check her rifle more than once. She vanished into the trail like she belonged to it. 19 minutes later, a single shot echoed through the pines. Then silence. Then Lana returned, empty mag, calm face. Target neutralized, she said. I checked the uplink. Confirmed hit. 2,320 meters. Elevated slope. Crosswind. Partial visibility. Perfect shot. No aid. No error. I nodded, trying to hold in what I felt, because I wasn't just proud. I was afraid. That night, I found another note under my door. One ghost recognizes another. You taught her too well. Rook line. No threats. No warnings. Just a truth I'd been dodging. Lana wasn't just learning to shoot. She was being watched. And not just by me. It snowed the morning she vanished. No note. No word. Just her bunk empty, her rifle gone. I knew before I saw the security footage where she was headed. North Ridge, the high ground above the training valley. Same place I'd once taken a shot that changed the course of a war. She wasn't running. She was waiting. I followed with only the essentials. My old pack, the rebuilt scope, and a rifle I hadn't carried since the day Marcus died. Halfway up the ridge, I found boot tracks. Not just hers. Someone else had come before me. She stood at the crest, rifle slung across her back, eyes scanning the valley like she could see time laid out in it. I stopped 10 feet behind her. You left. You taught me everything, she said. Except why you stopped. Her voice wasn't accusing, just tired. And behind her, stepping out from the tree line, came a second figure. Tall, broad, face covered, rook insignia carved into the chest plate. Your shadow, I said. They followed you. Lana nodded. They think they can still use me. Can they? She turned, looked me dead in the eyes. No. The rook operative raised his rifle. I didn't flinch. Stand down, Lana told him. He didn't move. So I raised mine. Not to kill. To choose. Because that's what this always was. Not a shot of violence, but of truth. One breath. One heartbeat. One choice. Lana stepped between us. And with calm only real shooters understand, she said. No more ghosts. We shoot to protect, not to erase. The operative hesitated, then slowly, unbelievably, lowered his rifle and walked away. Later, as we descended the ridge, Lana asked, was that the last shot? I smiled. No, but it was the most important one. She stayed in Montana after that. Not to hide, to teach. And I stayed too. Not as Lark, not as legend. Just as a woman with oil-stained gloves and a barn full of memory. The students kept coming. Civilians, soldiers, a few who didn't say who they were at all. We taught them not to fire faster, but to breathe slower. Not to calculate harder, but to feel deeper. And every now and then, I'd find a note from Lana on the range. Winds shifting. Reaper, you've got this. Always signed with 2 simple letters. CC. Last month, I got a letter. From a private I trained 2 years ago. A photo was tucked inside. His unit alive, smiling, muddy, but home. You taught me how to survive, it read. And I did. Thank you. That day, I added a new line to the plaque above my workbench. One breath. One truth. One life saved. Because sometimes, the shot that matters isn't the one that hits a target. It's the one that echoes quietly, years later, through someone who made it home.